I really wish you could smell my kitchen right now because it smells so good. Tonight for dinner, we're gonna do a sheet pan dinner. This one is a little bit fall inspired. So the flavors are a little different from maybe other sheet pans that you've seen, but they're all really good and they're working together really well. Now the recipe here calls for chicken breasts. We're using chicken thighs. It's just a preference here. Use whichever ones you prefer. You could even go with drumsticks or something else if that's what you want to do. Technically, you don't have to marinate your chicken, but I do feel like this is a Saturday. I have the time. I might as well marinate it. So let's make up a good marinade for this. In this little bowl here, I'm going to combine about 3 tablespoons of olive oil, and we want to add a good amount of garlic because remember, this is a marinade. You want lots of good garlic. So I'm adding in at least 3 teaspoons of garlic. I might even go back at the end and add in a little bit more. And we are going to add some cinnamon. Now I like cinnamon, but I'm not a huge cinnamon fan. So the recipe calls for a teaspoon, but I think I'm gonna go a little less, like maybe a half teaspoon. And then toss in some salt and pepper. Combine all of this together, and this is going to go all over the chicken, and I'm gonna let this marinate in the fridge for about 2 hours or so. That's a good marinating time. If you have the ability to marinate it, go ahead and do that, but don't fret. If you don't have the time to marinate, that's okay too. If you don't have the time to marinate, just put this on your chicken right before you put it into the oven. I'm cutting up a sweet potato. I actually was gonna do 2, but I'm just gonna stick with 1 for this recipe. So I'm just cubing it up into bite-sized pieces. Definitely peeling it first. You can leave the peel on if that's something that you prefer. We just prefer ours peeled. And then I'm gonna be taking about 3 apples. The recipe only calls for 2, but since this sweet potato is not as large as I would like it to be, I'm gonna go for 3 apples. I'm cubing this the same size as the sweet potato. I am not peeling the apple though. It's totally preference. You do however you wanna do this. And then I think this would be really good with Brussels sprouts, but I used the Brussels sprouts that I ordered in a different recipe. So I have some green beans. I have about a half a bag of those. So we're gonna add the green beans in instead and just have it with green beans tonight. Let's take these ingredients, toss them together in a bowl. I'm gonna add some olive oil and some salt and pepper. Use whatever flavors you love, whatever spices, herbs, all that kind of stuff, whatever you love. Toss that together and get them all nicely coated, and we'll get this ready to roast. All right, friends, we've got our parchment lined baking sheet here. Let's take our vegetables and go ahead and line the whole thing. And I'm just gonna kind of shake it around so that they spread out evenly. My oven is currently preheating to 425 degrees. These are gonna go in and roast for 15 minutes. Then we're gonna add the chicken on top of it and continue cooking. This part has been in the oven for about 15 minutes or so. I am gonna toss these before we add the chicken. You can put your chicken directly on top, but I just created a little area to put it in here. This has actually been marinating for about 4 hours now, so it should be good. All right, you guys, this is gonna go back into the oven for about 20 to 25 minutes until the chicken is fully cooked through. All right, we got lots of fall colors here. Looks really pretty. Let's give it a taste. All right, I'm gonna try the chicken because that marinade was really interesting to me. I like it. I like that. The cinnamon actually adds a really cool element of flavor. All right, let's try the other stuff. You've got the sweetness from the apples and the sweet potato. I feel like with the savory chicken, if you take a bite with the apple and the sweet potato and you have that sweetness too, this is good, guys. I like this one. For our sheet pan dinner tonight, we are going to make mini meatloaves. We've got 2 pounds of ground beef here. Use whatever amount of ground beef that you need though. We're gonna add about 3/4 of a cup of oats, and you can also do this with breadcrumbs if that's something that you prefer. Breadcrumbs, panko. We like ours with oatmeal. Now this is not anybody's specific recipe that I'm following. This is just me having made meatloaf, you know, a million times. And so throwing things in here. We're gonna add in some minced garlic. That's about a teaspoon. I also really like to add in a little bit of onion powder. So I don't know, maybe a little less than a teaspoon, but add the flavors that you love, add more, add less, you know, however you like it. And you can also add onion, obviously. I'm gonna add in some garlic powder, even though we added in some minced garlic. I just really like to add a little bit of that in. And we are going to add in this Auntie Nino's Steakhouse seasoned salt. I also really like to add in some Worcestershire. So I'm gonna go with approximately maybe 1.5 teaspoons or so, maybe 2 teaspoons. We really like Worcestershire, so again, add the things that you love. 2 eggs. And I'm gonna start by just mixing this together. We're gonna add a little bit of milk in just a minute, but I'm gonna do a pre-mix to get things going. Now, most of the recipes that I see tell you to add about 3/4 a cup of milk, but I always feel like that's excessive. So we go closer to a half, maybe even closer to a third. I love adding cheese to our meatloaf, so I am going to add some cheese. Feel free to skip that if you need to, or you don't like the idea of having cheese, but it's so delicious. So we're gonna go with right around a cup. So I think I'm gonna use about 3/4 of a cup or so per loaf. And it's just easy. I mean, I've got that right there, so I'm just kind of measuring it out. And then form into like a ball shape, and then we will place it onto our baking sheet and turn it into its own little mini loaf. It's so fun when everybody gets their own. I don't know, I just really like the idea. Obviously, you can make one large meatloaf if you want to. I just think this is fun, and it makes it a little different. There are so many recipes for meatloaf, obviously. My friend Mandy has a really good bacon. There's one that has bacon in it. And is it in it or on it? I'm trying to remember. But there are mini meatloafs too. Very, very good. So check that out if you want a different recipe for mini meatloafs. Now, before I start prepping everything else for dinner, let's go ahead and preheat my oven to 425. Okay, we love these little mini potatoes, these little, I think they're gourmet mini potatoes. I'm going to quarter them and then put them all around the meatloaf. Comment down below and let me know, are you one of those people that just feels like meatloaf has to go with potatoes? Because I definitely feel that way. And normally for us, it's mashed potatoes. But since we are doing this sheet pan style, don't know that mashed potatoes worked really well on a sheet pan. I would be interested to see that though. I have this bag of green beans. We're going to use these because that is just very convenient and easy. I'm not going to be using all of them, just however many I feel like is the appropriate size for our family. So we'll just pile them on here. We want to drizzle our veggies in a little bit of olive oil. I'm gonna be using this Steakhouse seasoned salt again. We're going to put that on the veggies. And then I'm just gonna use my hands and toss them just a little bit in the olive oil just to kind of get them coated. You could have done all this in a bowl first if you wanted to, but the whole point in sheet pan dinners is to reduce the amount of bowls. Okay, and now you can kind of spread them around too. I kept them all grouped together just so that I wouldn't have to put olive oil all over the place. We need to make our sauce for the top of the meatloaf. Guys, I keep this so simple. I do not have measurements for this. I will give you estimations below in the description box. So we're going with some ketchup, and I usually use ketchup that is like a lower sugar. So this one doesn't have corn syrup in it. That's probably around 1/2 cup. I'm gonna add in some Worcestershire, really simple here. I like to add in basically the same ingredients as the meatloaf, a little bit of garlic powder, a little bit of onion powder, and a little bit of that Steakhouse seasoning. And we always add in some brown sugar. So I have my tablespoon measurer here. That's probably about what I'm gonna, maybe a little more. Can mix this together, and then you can just brush this over the top of your meatloaf. Perfect timing, the oven is ready. Okay, so I am starting with some of this on the meatloaf, and I will end up pulling these out about halfway through and then adding a little bit more. It's just so good that way. Because of the size of these, they're gonna take a little less time to cook than if it were a traditional meatloaf. So overall, I'm estimating about 35 minutes, but we always check ours just to see if it's done. So I'll take them out around the 20-minute mark, and that's when I will end up adding a little bit more of this to the top. Look how good this looks. All right, let's get this in the oven. I almost walked away without trying this. All right, I've been just kind of snacking on the potatoes over there. I already know that they're very good, but let me just try this meatloaf real quick for you. Ooh, it's still steaming. Great flavor. And my husband actually just came downstairs and said, what a neat idea to have little miniature meatloaf for everybody. But the seasoning on these, very, very good. I love the potatoes like that. I think there's just enough liquid in that meatloaf. It's not too wet of a consistency. It's not too dry. It's really, really good. The seasoning is on point in my opinion. I'm excited about this one. I actually made this dinner the other night and I decided to not film it right beforehand. I just wanted a night where I could throw together a quick dinner, and I was so disappointed that I didn't film it because it was so delicious. So we're remaking it again tonight. That's how much we liked it. Like 3 nights later, we're having it again, okay? This is a sheet pan ginger soy glazed trout. You can use salmon if you want to though. We are actually using trout because trout is a little less expensive than salmon, so we're getting a little bit more value. But let's go ahead and start prepping all of the vegetables. The last time I made this, I didn't use these little potatoes, but we love them. So we're gonna add some in, okay? So with these, I'm actually just going to quarter them. But you would just do, you know, use whatever potatoes you want to use and then just cut them to the size that you need. So you also want a bowl handy so that you can just throw everything into that bowl. We're gonna be tossing everything in some olive oil and some salt and pepper. You could use coconut oil or whatever type of oil you like. I can't remember if I used coconut oil last time. I think it was olive oil. So that's what we're gonna go with. For the green beans, I'm not gonna use this whole bag. Cut some of these in half. You don't even have to use green beans. Brussels sprouts would be really delicious with this if you like Brussels sprouts, but I do wanna add a little bit of green in here, so we're going for about half the bag. And we'll do a couple of carrots. Yes, I do have a 5-pound bag of carrots because we eat a ton of them. So you guys know, if you've been here for a little while, that we love color. If these are not your favorite vegetables, use whatever vegetables you like on this sheet pan. I mean, I feel like that's pretty standard across the board with any recipes that I do, but just use the stuff that you love. If you don't like it, you're not gonna eat it anyway, and you're not gonna love it in the same way that we do. So use the things that your family enjoys. And the thing about vegetables like this is even if we don't eat them tonight, then I have leftovers for lunch tomorrow, and I'm not hating that. Last time I did these, I did it with salt and pepper, and I just realized that we're out of pepper, so I'm just gonna use a seasoning blend that we like. Feel free to use salt and pepper. It was delicious that way, okay? So we're just going to drizzle with some olive oil. And I like to do this twice just to make sure I get a nice coating. So I'm gonna sprinkle with seasoning, and we're gonna mix, then drizzle, sprinkle, mix again. Oh, see, we got flying vegetables. Could have used a tad larger bowl, but you know, here on Feeding the Birds, that's pretty standard that when I'm mixing something, I say probably should have used a larger bowl. All right, another little drizzle and another little shake and another little mix. We're getting seasoning on each one, olive oil on each one. They're gonna be nicely coated. This is such a colorful dish. I don't if I said in the beginning, but my oven is currently preheating to 400 degrees. We picked this up at Sam's Club. It is a trout instead of a salmon. So this one right here is 1.63 pounds and it was $14. Roughly the same size salmon was about $23. So definitely savings. And trout is delicious if you haven't tried it before. Okay, so it is a skin on. So we take the whole thing out and just lay it on the sheet pan. Now we're just gonna take our vegetables and they're gonna go all along the outside of the fish. Spread it out a little bit. And we need to make the sauce that's gonna go on the top of the trout. This is the money part right here, you guys. We have a bowl to make our sauce in. So for this, I'm using coconut aminos instead of soy sauce. You guys know we typically do that, but we need about a 1/4 cup. Oh, that did not have one of the shaker tops on it. Add about 2 tablespoons of this organic sweet chili sauce. I picked this up at Whole Foods. This is something we actually have on hand at all times because I think it's delicious added to any type of ginger or Asian inspired dish. So we're adding about 2 tablespoons. I'm not measuring, this is completely just eyeballing it. And that is okay for something like this. We do need to add about a tablespoon of honey. And you guys know I always keep this on hand. This is a ginger paste instead of grating my own ginger, which is very easy to do, but this is easy to just keep in the refrigerator. So for this, we need about a tablespoon, but we love ginger, so I typically go a little more than the recipes call for. Add some minced garlic. We need about 2 cloves. Okay. Now last time I didn't do this, but this time at the grocery store, I picked up green onion. The recipe does call for it. Chop it up, and then this will be really nice in this sauce. I do want to add a little bit of white. So I'm gonna go ahead and chop that up as well. You might be curious, if you've been here for a while, you know that we typically do not add onions to our recipes because my husband does not like onions. But for some reason, he doesn't mind green onions. So we needed a tablespoon. This is probably a little more than a tablespoon, but that's okay. Mix all of this together and then just drizzle it. Obviously, it's totally okay if some of it gets on the vegetables because it's just so good. Now this really does not take a long time at all. This is gonna go in the oven for about 20 minutes. We'll check and see if it's done at that point, and then we're gonna broil it and cook for another 2 or 3, and that's just gonna crisp up the top. This is not salmon, trout. You're gonna crisp up the top and it's gonna be so, I'm telling you guys, it's so good. I'm gonna reserve just a little bit in my bowl because right before I put it on the broil function, I'm gonna add a little bit more to the top. So I already told you guys that this was delicious, but I'm gonna try it for you anyway so I can just prove again that it's delicious. It's perfect. We did end up cooking it just a little bit longer, so about 25 minutes or so. Another thing that you could do is cook your vegetables for about 10 minutes first, then add the trout or the salmon to the sheet pan and cook it for an additional 15 or so. But the cook is perfect and you get that ginger flavor, you get that honey flavor, so good. Bloopers are coming up in just a second, you don't wanna miss, but I wanted to tell you I'm gonna be doing a holiday appetizers videos and I want your recipes. My friend Jessica O'Donohue did this and it went off so well. She loved all the things that they were able to find and make and talk about you guys. So I would love it if you would email me. I will have the email in my description box. It's feedingbyrds@gmail.com. I need to know a little bit about you, how you came to this recipe or developed this recipe or who it's from, and send in the recipe and I'm gonna choose several of them to make here on my channel. I would love to include yours, so make sure you send those over. And the fridge is open. Our verse today comes from Isaiah 7:14. Therefore, the Lord himself will give you a sign. Behold, the virgin shall conceive and bear a son, and shall call his name Emmanuel. If you want more inspiration, I highly suggest that you check out this video right here. It is a favorite.